Before there was a throne, there was a table. Not a crown, not an army, not a field of burning men. A table. Black, silent, and shaped like a continent that did not yet know it was about to become one realm. Later, singers would remember the dragons, lords would remember the fire. But the conquest began in a room of stone, with candles trembling in the sea wind, and 3 dragon riders staring down at rivers, mountains, ports, roads, and weaknesses. For nearly a century after the doom, Dragonstone was not a capital. It was a wound in the sea. Its towers clung to black cliffs. Its halls smelled of salt, smoke, and old fear. The world called House Targaryen lucky. Some called them cowards. The last Dragon Lords had survived, yes. But survival is not the same as power. A family can keep its blood and still lose its purpose. Then came Aegon, not the loudest of his blood, not the most beloved. He listened more than he spoke, and that made men nervous. When others boasted, Aegon watched. When others threatened, Aegon counted ships, granaries, bridges, and sons. His dragon, the Black Dread, was less a beast than a moving nightfall. Men who saw its shadow did not need to be told what power meant. Beside him stood Visenya, his elder sister and wife. She was discipline-given flesh. She liked clean armor, clear orders, and enemies who understood fear before they understood mercy. Some said she was cold. That was wrong. Cold can be accidental. Visenya was deliberate. Her dragon, Vhagar, moved through storm wind like a spear thrown by a god. And then there was Rhaenys, younger, brighter, and easier to underestimate. She loved songs, laughter, stories, and the kind of conversation that made guarded men forget they were being measured. Her gentleness was real, but it was not weakness. A soft voice can open a gate that a sword would only bloody. Above her, Meraxes loved the high air and the long, bright roads of the sky. 3 riders, 3 dragons, 1 island that the world had mistaken for a relic. From Dragonstone, they looked west, not as dreamers, not as children hungry for legend, as hunters. They knew what every king in the west had forgotten. A realm is not held together by pride. It is held together by roads, harvests, marriages, fear, and the speed at which a message can travel before an army arrives. Long before banners were raised, the dragons flew. They passed over storm-broken coasts and golden fields, river crossings and mountain roads, castles that looked strong from below and fragile from above. They saw where a king could hide, where an army would starve, where a bridge mattered more than a bloodline. The people below saw wonders. The riders above saw a map being corrected by firelight. At Aegon's command, craftsmen carved a great table in the shape of the western continent. Not a pretty court decoration, a weapon. Mountains rose beneath the knife. Rivers were cut into wood. Harbors, roads, forests, and islands took form by candlelight. But the table had no borders, no painted lines separating king from king. That was the first warning. In Aegon's eyes, borders were not truth. They were arguments waiting to be burned away. One night, the 3 of them stood over the table while the sea battered the walls below. Rhaenys touched the eastern coast and said softly, "They do not know us." Visenya answered, "Then they will learn." Aegon did not look up. His finger rested where rivers met. "No," he said. "First we learn them." Rhaenys smiled, almost sadly. "You want their crowns?" Aegon looked at the empty spaces between kingdoms. I want their wars to end beneath one law. Visenya's reply was a blade leaving its sheath. Then we will need more than law. 7 kings called themselves eternal. Aegon saw 7 vulnerabilities. The Riverlands were rich but torn between stronger neighbors. The Stormlands were proud and aging. The West had gold, but gold does not stop dragonfire. The Reach could feed half a continent and burn just as quickly. The Vale had mountains. The North had distance. Dorne had heat, patience, and a hatred of easy answers. It was not one conquest. It was 7 different problems wearing crowns. The first spark came from the Storm King, Aegon Targaryen, called the arrogant by his enemies, and the last storm by men who still loved him. He was old, but not weak. He saw the Ironborn pressing into the Riverlands and wanted a Dragon Lord's friendship before another king stole what he desired. So he offered Aegon land, alliance, and his daughter's hand. It was a generous offer. If a man believed Aegon could be treated like a lesser lord, Aegon refused the marriage. Then he made a counteroffer that cut deeper than any open insult. The Storm King's daughter, he said, would make a worthy bride for Orys Baratheon, Aegon's closest companion, and some whispered, his bastard brother. In the hall on Dragonstone, no one laughed. Rhaenys watched the message being sealed. Visenya said, he will take this as a wound. Aegon replied, then we will see how deeply pride bleeds. Argilax's answer came in a box. The envoy returned pale, shaking, and missing what no messenger should lose. Inside the box were hands, wrapped in stained cloth, and a message from Storm's End. These were the only hands Aegon's bastard would receive. For a long moment, Dragonstone heard only the wind. Then Visenya leaned over the box and said, he wants a beast. Rhaenys looked toward the window, where the dragons slept above the cliffs. No, she said. He wants a reaction. Aegon did not shout. He did not overturn the table. Men who need anger to look powerful are usually borrowing power from noise. Aegon only looked at the carved coast, the rivers, the castles, the places where armies would gather and burn. At last, he said, he sent us hands because he thinks we are still only lords of an island. Visenya asked, and what are we? Aegon closed the box. We will answer like kings. Ravens flew from Dragonstone into a sky heavy with rain. They carried words sharper than swords. To every king in the West, Aegon sent the same truth in different ink. Submit, keep your lands, and bend the knee. Refuse, and learn what the last dragon lords had carried out of the East. It was not yet war. It was the sound a door makes, just before it is kicked open. There was no grand city to cheer him, no conquered lords yet kneeling. Only black stone, sea wind, and the eyes of 2 queens who knew exactly what they were beginning. Beneath a sky the color of old iron, Visenya placed a crown of dark steel and red gems upon Aegon's head. Rhaenys whispered, after this, there is no returning to silence. Aegon looked west. Good, he said. Silence has lasted long enough. And far to the south, in a castle built to defy the sea. An old Storm King prepared to show the Dragon Lords that pride could still stand in the rain. He would not hide behind walls. He would ride out beneath thunder. And before the first crown fell, the world would witness the last storm. Next, the last storm. When Orys Baratheon faced the king who would not kneel.